Hey, what's going on, buddy? Tissue Panda back, and I should talk about something else today. By something else, it's going to be one of those videos. Now, generally speaking, when I make videos like this, I want to provide you all a little bit more information than just a few tidbits here and there. But, so I was on the fence about making this particular video, but it's so compelling because I watched two particular videos about somebody that was relatively close to Bella and ended up making, a pretty large impact on Bella's life. Not necessarily her life at the time, but more so now. Like calling her reputation and her mode of character into question. And this particular individual was relatively close to her, physically, as well as in the whole grand scheme of things, a person of interest that was looked upon by the trolls of Kiwi Farms. No, we're not talking about Fiona. No, we're not talking about Zoe, Alan, Louis, or any of her other close associates in that chess club, not chess club, sort of cult hangout group. We're talking about her dog, Max. So yeah, Max is definitely not a person, but her dog, she allegedly had, neglected it to the point that his paws had to be chopped off, and it was just sick and dying in its own filth. Now, these are allegations, of course, but a good fair amount of the Kiwi Farms is convinced that this is absolutely how it played out, how Max was basically neglected to death. And really, it was sort of Max was one of the primary, animals in Bella's life that, drew the attention of Kiwi Farms as well as various other interested parties online. Tried to seek justice. Animal cruelty is no laughing matter. People, don't really, look favorably upon people that like to abuse little animals. And Max was special because, he was a dog. People tend to like dogs. They like cats sometimes, but, me personally, I'll just go ahead and say that I'm more of a dog person myself. When I heard about the whole Max debacle, I was just kind of like, damn. They call him the best boy, they call him the bestest boy, and that he's a precious little gem of fur that was unfortunately lost to the ether thanks to Bella's neglect. I do not, say all this with absolute certain fact, but, the way that she sort of, refers to him in, certain conversations describing him and certain references to him, I can't help but feel that her intent was nefarious to begin with. And, the videos themselves are fairly innocuous. I mean, they meet for the first time on, the water bank, and Isabella is, crawling up and basically grabs him by... You know what? I'm just going to go ahead and show you the video, alright? And then we're going to show you another one on top of that. And, nothing, I don't really need to give you a warning because they're fairly innocuous. However, I'm going to be joining you during that video to provide commentary and just sort of, point out a few things that kind of made me tilt my head to one side and scratch my head. So, be back in a sec. Alright, so this is presumably where Isabella Jankes actually meets Max for the first time. And based on the sounds in the background when I watched the video the first time, I'm led to believe that there's at least 3 people. As in Bella herself, as well as the person recording the video, and a third voice. But there might actually be 4 people. Presumably a small group of college students. I mean, nothing out of the ordinary. And as far as the actual backdrop here, you can see that there's a concrete bridge. They seem to be at an overpass of some sort over some rushing water in the background, where behind Loretta Jankes. But you also see Max, and that is in fact Max. The black dog that's underneath the tree, perched up on the concrete bank, the river bank. So I'm just going to go ahead and play the video and pause it intermittently to give some commentary. We'll watch it fully with me being silent, for the first time. I'm going to give commentary, and just, we'll go from there. Alright?
This thing? That's just dirt.
Yeah, that's it. That's dirt.
He's on the other side.
Oh, which other side? I know he looks malnourished. For sure. I'm videoing it.
Thank you, buddy.
Yeah, make it. Yeah, put your.
He's trying to skate back.
You can use my jacket.
No, I got it. Come on. Are you? He's not cold. He's just shivering.
Oh yeah, we're warming up.
Yeah. I know. I'm not a dog person, but you're blocking my way out. sorry, buddy.
He's fine. Yeah, just push him here.
I want to grab him.
Yeah.
Wait, no, not too many people. Not too many. He's scared of you guys. He's scared.
Well, he's going to be really scared of you in a short while here. Let's watch that one more time, and I'll pause the video to give, like, light commentary.
Oh, this thing? That's just dirt.
Yeah, that's it. That's
Oh,
dirt.
he's on the other side. I didn't
Oh,
see
which
it.
other side?
Oh.
I know he looks malnourished. For sure. I'm videoing it.
Thank you, buddy.
Yeah,
Oh,
make it. Yeah,
come
put
on.
your.
He's trying to stay back.
You can use my jacket.
No, I got it. Come on. Are you? He's not cold. He's just shivering.
Oh yeah, we'll warm him up.
Yeah. Yeah. I know I'm not a dog person, but you're blocking my way out. So I'm going to grab you by the throat again. I'm sorry.
Okay, one, that's incredibly reckless of Isabella Jankes to, like, approach Max that way. I only say that because when you're in a strange place and there's a strange dog, you don't come up and start patting and, like, touching them, alright? You have no idea what the animal is, like, doing there. You don't know if they have rabies or something like that. I'm just, like, pointing that out just in case, because, like, that's one thing that I'm seeing here. Number two, why the fuck are you grabbing it by the scruff of its neck? And why would you say, oh, I'm going to grab you by the throat? Like, that seems a little bit weird choice of words, you know? You do it with small puppies because their body mass is, like, virtually nothing compared to an adult dog. You don't do that with adult dogs because they're quite a bit heavier than a puppy would be, you know? As in, like, grabbing them by the scruff, that would probably not feel too good, number one. Number two, it might cause some damage to the dog, I would imagine. You know, you like, she's got a fucking jacket. She could have, like, scooped him up or something like that. Plus, like, Max was just sitting there. I'm wondering why he was even there in the first place. Like, did somebody abandon him, or did he get lost from home? You know, so many questions being raised here. Anyway.
I'm sorry, buddy.
He's fine. Yeah, just push him here.
I want to grab him.
Yeah.
Wait, no, not too many people. Not too many. He's scared of you guys. He's scared.
Okay, so, like, not outwardly, like, threatening or incriminating, but at the same time, like, just a little bit unusual in how she went about the situation. Also, can I go ahead and ask, what was she doing in the water in the first place? Like, what conceivable reason or purpose did she have to be, like, down by the water? Was there, like, what was she doing down there? And you mean to tell me that that dog was blocking your way up? You couldn't have walked anywhere else to get out of that little area? Like, you know, her justification in the beginning, it's like, hey, like, I'm not really a dog person, but you're in my way. It's like, if you're not a dog person, then why'd you keep him? You could have put him up for adoption, or, like, turned him into, you know, animals, like, animal services, or, like, I should say, like, animal control, or somebody. Granted, like, not too many people would want to do that because, you know, they do get put down at some point, like strays and things like that, so maybe that's not the best solution, but Max definitely deserved better than being in her care, if the stories and, like, her admissions are to be believed. But anyway, let's just move along, shall we? Alright, so this is a fairly short video, but I want you to pay attention to Isabella Jankes and her dog Max. And, you know, we'll make some commentary at the end, alright? Like I said, very short video. I'm just going to go ahead and play it. Seems like a fairly innocuous video, don't you think? Let's play that again. I want you to pay attention to the sound she's making. I'm not trying to extrapolate anything that's nothing there, but at the same time, what the fuck is, like, with the sounds that she's making? It's like, yeah, yeah, and it's like, why is she recording this, number two? You know, I know what you're going to say. You're going to just be like, oh, Joe, she's just making baby talk with her dog. It's fine. It's fine. But, like, it almost feels like she's having an orgasm, like, while she's petting her dog. Like, what's going on here? Let's watch that one more time. And if I'm full of bullshit, hey, whatever. But I don't know, like, it just feels weird, you know? Okay, the good boy part, whatever, but yeah, yeah. It's like, what? Like, is she getting sexual pleasure from this? Let's just move on, shall we? So, this video on its own is not exactly problematic or incriminating in any way. It's honestly just Bella and her friend walking Goober around, but Goober is displaying sort of like unusual behavior insofar as they're hugging right up to the wall. Now, that's not necessarily telling of anything, bad going on, but it is kind of weird how the cat's like seemingly nervous and is just kind of, I don't know, hugging the wall like that. Anyway, let's go ahead and watch the video. Not a whole lot to remark on, but try to listen to the conversation they're having in the background.
He'd rather run with his mom than use the leash. That's hilarious.
Cats don't belong on leashes.
Oh, he's trying to find a shortcut.
He's trying to figure out how to leave.
Goober.
Oh, Goober, it's this bird over here. Come on, Goober, Goober. Goober.
Come on, Goober.
Come on, over here. Come on, buddy. Look, it's over here. Over here, buddy. Over here. Yeah, there you go. Come on. Use the color. Let's see which one. Good boy. Goober, Goober. Goober, go, go, Goober. Go, Goober. Go, Goober. Go, Goober, go. Go, Goober, go. Yeah.
We'll get you to like the leash eventually.
Yeah, well, yeah, we will. We just have to figure out the timing now.
Come on, Goober, you're almost there.
Look, Goober, wow. Look, right over here. Your numbers. Oh my God, Goober, we did it.
Come on, Goober.
We did it. Good job. Good job.
I'm going to assume that that's the dormitories where Bella was staying at college. And, this video isn't exactly new. It's been, like, circulating around, but Goober, I guess, maybe in a strange place. He's not very familiar with the grounds of, like, the dormitory. And they remark that they're trying to get him used to, like, a collar. Or I should say a leash. But yeah, cats don't really belong on leashes, So this is part 2 of, like, Goober just being walked around the dormitories. And as you can see, they finally leashed the cat. And I cannot imagine that the cat's very happy with that, but let's go ahead and watch the video and see if anything, pops out of this.
Like break his arm going in the wall. Good boy. You're doing so well. You're gonna be so fit. You're gonna be so fit. All the ladies are gonna love you. And he's gonna scream and run away. Oh yeah.
Kid loves your new figure.
New big boy figure. We're gonna gain his self-confidence back.
I'm not sure why they're trying to be so artificially encouraging of him and, like, at the same time kind of, like, denigrating him. But what they mentioned at the, like, beginning was, like break his arm or something. Are they referencing the fact that he's sort of, like, hugging the wall? He's getting very close to doorways, so I can only imagine, like, all those doorways open the opposite way, so that's fine. But imagine if, like, those doorways opened outwards and, like, somebody just happened, like, be walking out at the time that they're walking the cat and, like, hits Goober. Heavens fucking forbid, but yeah, it's just unusual. Anyway, let's move on, shall we? So this one, interestingly enough, popped up a while ago. I mean, I believe the original video was uploaded in 2019. And as you can see in the top right-hand corner in the annotation, it's everythinglubach.com. So this was a short news story that sort of was circulating at the time, and people very quickly sort of like caught notice of it, especially more recently in light of the allegations against Bella, and they felt that this was part of her handiwork. But I'm just going to go ahead and play the video. It should be fairly self-explanatory, and we'll meet back up at the very end to talk about it, shall we?
It scared me a little bit, and I was shocked. And I thought these people ought to be, that's not right. In other words, that's not right for people to do that to animals. And broke my heart to see that hamster in that cage and inside that bag like that.
So, if you actually were to search this video on Google and like on YouTube, especially, you'd see a bunch of people that are just remarking about how like this is definitely Bella's handiwork. There's no actual proof one way or the other to like reference whether Bella was, directly responsible for this. I wouldn't be surprised because this is the same girl that basically said, "Hey, I've been already through 8 hamsters already. Like, what's a couple more, huh?" I find it curious that she didn't torture or maim or like kill this one, and instead just, unceremoniously got rid of it via dumpster on a cold, cold day. And like it was wrapped in a plastic bag, so the hamster would have died if this janitor hadn't been nice enough to, investigate, intervene, and rescue it as he did. So, yeah, not exactly the bombshell material that you've all been waiting for, but at the same time, people like Machete Duck on YouTube have been a godsend in providing real-time data and any information that he can possibly attain about Isabella Jankes. And all of this together sort of formulates a picture in your mind in which you can sort of question her mode of character. Is she a good person? Is she honest? Has she been telling the truth? And largely, I would have to say that a lot of her activities have been very suspicious. I mean, think about it. Like, would an innocent person throw everybody in their inner circle? And I'm talking about, like, presumably close friends, the only people that were in active association with Loretta Jankes. Like, would an honest person, an innocent person, throw anybody around them under the bus in the face of allegations? And these are just allegations. I mean, I understand that some people that were going after her, as far as the trolls, people that were questioning her, people that were doubting her, I understand that they can be a little bit unpleasant, perhaps, very unpleasant. But at the same time, your first reaction to any, adverse situation like that shouldn't be, "Oh shit, I need somebody to, like, use as a scapegoat so I can dodge the heat." It's like if I were to pull a heist with some friends and it's like we're in it to win it, guys, my first thought would not be betrayal. You're sort of in it to win it. One for all for one. And like that thought process of like, Bella's to just like grab whoever, wherever, given the opportunity, given like, plausible deniability on her part, just throw them under the bus so that she can save her own skin and just avoid any drama. And that's just a very self-serving, like, narcissistic and selfish attitude to take in sort of, like, these sorts of situations. No wonder, like, fucking Fiona was sent to a mental ward, for a little while there. She's presumably doing a lot better now, and supposedly she appeared on Reddit not too long ago to give her 2 cents on the matter before going silent again. But that's unverified as of right now. I'm just telling you all that it happened, and whether it really happened, like it was actually Fiona, we don't know. But, a lot of people, smart money would place that it was actually Fiona just trying to add her 2 cents to the whole situation before her internet access was presumably revoked by her parents. But yeah, just like the behavior alone, I understand that some of you out there exercise professional skepticism. In fact, I'm glad you do, because I think that any of this material that crosses your plate, you should take at least a grain of salt when you're looking at it and just keep in the back of your mind, okay, is this real or is this bullshit? Because there have been plenty of people that have managed to pull the wool over people's eyes and, cancel people on false grounds, or they made up bullshit to save their own ass, or they lied and denied about various things. But in Isabella's case, her behavior, as well as her own words, I'm talking about like the screen caps that come out, should be proof enough that she's at the very least a despicable individual that should honestly be doubted, in a lot of what she tries to say, because, there's been this interview floating around. I know I refer to them as gourmand, and I think it was actually Gorand, but he and a girl were sort of just questioning Bella, and the attitude that they took was very neutral. They exercised neutrality throughout their interactions together, and Bella would fly off the handle and just got very defensive about relatively minute things. I understand if you're an innocent individual, this is the first time you're hearing something, you'd probably react adversely too, but at the same time, in Bella's case, she knew exactly what the score was, and, her quote-unquote act, to try, hey, I'm going to convince you that I'm innocent without providing you any, evidence or proof to substantiate that. Trust me, I am innocent because I know I'm innocent. that don't fly with me, alright? Like, especially when there's enough material just kind of floating out of the ether that, you know, seems to point otherwise, alright? So, a lot of you, if you're watching this video right now, I'm going to go ahead and assume that you've been keeping up with current events as far as, you know, Bella's concerned, but there have been, like, a couple of comments that I can't help but just kind of, like, you know, cock an eye at and just be, like, scratching my head. What annoys me a little bit, not a whole lot, but, you know, this is my sort of reaction to certain comments. They'll be like, hey, like, what about this, this, and this? I'm like, did you watch the video? Did you read the description? I don't say everything in the description because of limitations of space, but, you know, if you watch the video, I do mention, like, something about that in the video. Like, I don't make these videos just to, you know, fill the air. I make them, you know, with my commentary, number one, number two, whatever topics of interest I try to mention inside of the commentary, alright? You're gonna have to sift through the bullshit if you prefer. But at the same time, like, no, it's, like, she's guilty as sin. The problem is, a lot of this is, she was, like, simultaneously dumb, but cognizant enough that a lot of her activities were solely online. Granted, I don't know what kind of a dumbass would decide to use their real name as a username. Like, you know, in Discord, you can sort of, like, change your name to, like, reflect, like, something other than your de facto username. Like, you know, what's appearing to other users. But, like, I don't know why she did that for a couple of, like, you know, entries. At the same time, she also used a number of sock puppet accounts. And the only people I ever known to use sock puppet accounts are people that are up to no good. Again, anecdotal, like, I'm sure maybe there's people that do that for some sort of, maybe they're trying to, like, pull a prank or something, or they're trying to mess with people online. Not really for me to judge, but at the same time, like, I'm just saying that a lot of her behavior is not something an innocent person would tend to do, you know? Does that necessarily make her automatically guilty? No. But you need to correlate, you know, reasonable suspicion with her own words and what material does get out, alright? It is known that a lot of the material that was shared on that quote-unquote chess club cult hangout meet was shock material. You know, gore, rape, you know, various things that are nasty that, you know, honestly, no real sane person should be disseminating. Maybe if you're 12 or 13 and you're really raunchy, but most 12 to 13-year-olds grow out of that mindset, you know? They're done looking at dead bodies on, like, you know, was it, like, those websites where you can, like, see dead bodies if you so wish, Live Leak or whatever. You grow out of it, okay? These were 18 to 20, like, something-year-olds that were all engaged in this sort of behavior. And talking about pretty raunchy stuff. And a lot of this I shouldn't really be repeating myself on, but, like, add that to the whole list of what Isabella Jankes has been doing. Let's go ahead and talk about the video, shall we? So, yeah, like I said before, fairly innocuous, not a whole lot going on there, but just listen to, like, Isabella Jankes' sort of, you know, her tone of voice as she's, like, referring to Max. Not really overtly problematic, but at the same time, her word choice for, like, I'm gonna grab you by the throat now. And, like, she does seem to, like, show some concern for the dog, which is jarring because later on, Max is said to have, like, died from, you know, neglect. His paws had to be amputated because they were so rotten and, like, you know, gangrenous. And he died in his own filth, basically. That was Max's fate at Bella's care. And supposedly she works with small animals. That's what, you know, her father mentioned, at least. Again, this is from, like, the 10 seconds I saw his comment before it was, like, quickly removed. So don't quote me on that one, but supposedly she has had occasion to work with small animals, and I expressed concern about that, because this is the individual that would be committing, like, the hamster genocide if she had the opportunity to. You know, boiling them alive, and in one case, eating them. And, you know, like, if it was, like, a cultural thing, it's like, okay, whatever, but she just did it to do it, you know, with Lewis. And Alan was aware of that, you know? His claim was that he heard it screaming, but he wasn't actually watching the video, which I think is just a like cop-out excuse. I bet he was actually watching it, but you know, again, his words. He went to the bathroom, heard it screaming, was like, "What the fuck was that?" Came back, and Loretta told him all about it. And yeah. And like the only living animal that's with Bella right now is Goober that I'm aware of, you know. And a couple of videos have surfaced online. You know, Machete Duck has gone out of his way to provide a lot of information, as I mentioned. You know, and he gets some of these videos from Kiwi Farms, it appears, but some of the other videos, I'm not sure where he gets those. But anyway, what I do notice is that she was like behaving strangely around the cat, and the cat was behaving very oddly. You know, some people have been pointing out that to acclimate a cat to a leash, you know, you sort of like walk it outside, and the cat's going to react differently because cats really don't like being on a leash. Dogs are okay with it after a while, I'm sure, but like cats seem to react to it a little bit differently. Goober seemed nervous. Like he seemed very nervous and was like hugging the wall. Now that could just be Goober being Goober, and like, you know, that's a quirk of that particular cat. Because, you know, different cats are going to react to things in different ways, but at the same time, the way that she like mentioned breaking his arm or something like that, like it could have been like, "Hey, don't get too close to those doors, I don't want you to break your arm now." Or it could have been like her alluding to like breaking his arm for some reason. And like, I'm not understanding what her MO is like with Goober, other than she supposedly feeds it a lot of like rancid foods to get it to shit like, you know, really disgusting shits because the smell gets her off. Yeah, she's a scat fetishist, but not just a scat fetishist. She likes the animal kind of scat, specifically cats. And also her kink, like her admission to a kink, was supposedly that she likes like a big buff dude stroking a cat. So a big buff dude stroking a pussy. Okay. Unusual, not necessarily incriminating, but certainly unusual. Very oddly specific. She, in spite of the fact that she seems to exhibit like homosexual tendencies, you know, a desire for other women, that happens to be the thing that gets her off. That and the cat shit. But again, that's largely going from her words and her, you know, like the screen caps that have come out from those in association with her. That's where the evidence lies. A lot of this evidence probably wouldn't be admissible in court unless you had real top tier like tech experts that could correlate her IP address with a particular username and the activity that was going off of her machine. But again, to get her like access to her machine, you'd need a warrant, and there'd have to be like reasonable suspicious cause. But granted, this is also the girl that liked to get, you know, CP, you know, cheese pizza. What does cheese pizza mean? Well, it's a pornographic material that is considered illicit and illegal because it exploits, you know, minors. So I'll let you go ahead and pick up the dots from there, okay? Like, pick up the material from there and just make your own assessment, because I already have. Anyway, we'll get back to that. Again, I am just being completely honest with you all. I've been looking for that video of the hamster being boiled alive. Not because I want to watch a small animal die, but because the only fragment of, like, proof of that was her admission and the reactions of the Discord server in the face of a screen cap of a hamster quite visibly in, you know, what seems to be warm water. It's not necessarily boiling or scalding hot yet, but it's probably getting there. She probably, like, put the pot on the stove and turned up the dial and is just letting the water slowly heat up while the hamster's still in the water. And the only reaction was, like, from one of the people was like, "Swim, fucker, swim." And, yeah, not exactly a good way to go. And, you know, Inspector was nice enough to, like, mention that usually, you know, like in the last video, I was, like, expressing remorse at my desire to, like, eat lobster, and how lobsters are boiled alive. So lobsters are typically impaled in the head to at least help in making it less painful. Granted, the way the lobster works is completely different from, you know, a hamster, because the hamster has one brain as part of its circulatory system and its nervous system. The lobster supposedly has a number of things that contribute to its nervous system. But anyway, we're getting off topic. My apologies. That all to say, like, I can only imagine the excruciating pain that hamster went through. And, like, to go, like, you know, just before we move on to another topic of interest here, I just want to make mention of something. A while back, I watched a short video that was basically a newsreel about how a hamster was left out in the cold, like sub-zero temperatures. And it led me to believe that this was somehow tangentially related to Isabella Jankes. Is it entirely possible that an irresponsible student at Texas Tech University decided to, like, it didn't want a hamster anymore and left it outside in the cold? Yeah, but, like, given Bella's history of, like, killing and torturing hamsters, is it really that much of a suspension of disbelief to say that she might have had some hand in that? A janitor found the hamster in its cage in the dumpster, and it was, like, really cold out. The hamster did survive, thankfully, so don't think it suffered any more than it had to. It survived the cold and was rescued, so that's good. But, you know, a lot of people were asking questions like, who would do this? Why would you leave a perfectly good hamster out, like, in its cage in the freezing cold for it to die slowly? You know, you do that with mice because they're pests, but, like, even then, you would, you know, not do that under normal circumstances, even with pests. So, I don't know, like, it's... Her and small animals probably don't mix. The thing that weirded me out about the two videos I showed you is, like, how she seemed to be getting sexual pleasure. Like, especially towards the end of the video, when Max is, like, pawing at her hand, and her hand has gone limp. Like, maybe my imagination is just fucked up enough to describe to you all, but, like, I'm imagining that she's, like, you know, fingering herself, like, while that's happening. The way that she was, like, going, yeah, like, what the fuck? Like, Bella, is there something that you want? Are you, like, loose associates with, like, you know, fucking Kira the Wolf? I doubt it. Like, she doesn't seem to be a zoophile or zoo sadist or anything like that. Well, zoo sadist, sadist insofar as torturing small animals, but maybe not fucking them. But, you know, it's... Ugh. I don't want to imagine that. On top of which, someone's been making the recurrent joke, you know, that Delphine really has to ring in her, like, errant sister, implying that Isabella Jankes is Delphine's sister. Must be a, you know, lost at birth or something like that, like a distant sister that has just gone, you know, the prodigal daughter has just gone, you know, out into the world and must be reined back in before she does more harm to the fine people of the world. I don't know. Anyway, let's get on to, like, actual news here. So this has been talked about, like, loosely on some threads, that there was a lot of the students, and I don't know what a lot, you know, pertains to. It could be anywhere from, like, 10 students, 5 students, 100 students, but students at Texas Tech University have noticed Isabella Jankes as being sort of, like, no bueno. My question is, was she always just that weird girl that was kind of hot, but also kind of weird and creepy, and they kept her distance? Or was it, like, sort of a situation where her ideals and her opinions are known online, and so people know enough to stay away from her and consider her a, you know, not a good person? Or is she, like, actively harassing people to the point that, like, they're sick of her, they're done with her? Because supposedly there was supposed to be some sort of a march on Texas Tech University occurring on the 21st. I don't think that happened, at least not to the degree that it was sort of advertised as, because the way that it was sort of advertised is that this was supposed to be a massive march against animal cruelty, against the bad behavior of Isabella Jankes, and that this is supposed to be sort of like a move for, like, solidarity amongst campus alumni. A lot of the kiwi farmers that sort of looked at that, you know, there were definitely, like, threads and, like, you know, Twitter threads exchanged, and there was, like, some sort of a advertisement. What I'm curious about was that like organically formed by a student that's currently at Texas Tech University, Or was that something that a troll from Kiwi Farms decided to do to try to, like, instigate some sort of a action against Isabella Jankes by her own classmates? That's what I'm wondering. And, like, I don't think it gained a lot of traction, but supposedly it happened. It was the 21st, I believe. Like, don't quote me on that one, because, you know, like, those threads are kind of hard to keep up with. Sometimes threads get removed, but, yeah, like, there was supposed to be some sort of march. Like, at least enough students appear to be aware of Isabella Jankes to come forward. And, like, the people in that like, chess club, you know, the chess club on Discord masquerading as, like, you know, chess club of the university, and it really wasn't. It was just a troll hangout. Enough of those people have come forward to share information about, you know, Bella, that a clear picture of her can be formed. Right now, it's really just going back further and further. Like, she even released some sort of a manifesto that I kind of want to read at some point. But the manifesto was written years ago, but it will impart sort of a idea of where the beginnings of her current mindset might have began. Although it might just be like she's had this for 5 to 10 years now, and that just happens to be her committing that ideal to words for, you know, I don't know why she posted it online. I guess, like, the point of a manifesto is to make others aware of, like, you know, what you stand for and what the ideals of your particular, you know, belief system are. But at the same time, it's like, you know, you're kind of giving yourself away, girl. Granted, she's not the sharpest tool in the shed, as you will soon often be aware. For instance, the only reason she ever got into Texas Tech University is because of large contributions by her father. She's definitely an average student and not too inclined to be a productive, you know, student. So the fact that she's going for an engineering major is fairly impressive to me. It also shows that daddy's money can buy a lot of things. And considering the fact that she comes from a well-to-do home, like, I'm wondering, because, like, some of the people that watch these videos, they made passive-aggressive remarks about how she's basically had life on easy street. Like, how she's never had to face real-world consequences or, you know, anything that would hold her back. Whereas, if you or I were to do, like, some of the things that she's guilty of, you know, it wouldn't end too well for us, you know? Daddy's money can only carry us so far. You know, especially if you came from a middle-class family or lower middle class family like me. So, yeah. Daddy's money is really trying to protect Isabella Jankes. Especially with those DDoS attacks. I can only imagine what Mike Jankes has been, like, paying for that. But, again, that's not proven. Who knows? Perhaps the internet GoFunded me like some sort of a hacker, and they've been going after Kiwi Farms because enough of these people have had enough Kiwi Farms and their trolling attempts and interfering in their lives. Or maybe, like, you know, death rays from Mars are, like, specifically targeting the Kiwi Farms, and it's going down every couple of days because of, you know, the lunar eclipse there. I don't know. So, yeah, like, enough of the students on campus seem to be at least aware, and some of them are in contact with the Kiwi farmers. Usually they had some sort of a, you know, association with Bella, either being former roommates or they were former members of her inner circle. The same inner circle that was thrown under the bus to save Bella's skin. At least she was hoping so, but that didn't exactly play out that way. What really happened is, as the Kiwi farmers levied pressure on these, like, smaller members, they shared whatever information they had as a fuck you to Bella because, you know, they're just returning the favor. Bella didn't really think this one out, you know? She's not really a strategist, which I guess is fortunate for us, but at the same time, it just makes this whole mess more convoluted than it needs to be. Alright, so there have been whispers about this, but I don't really see any confirmation one way or the other. Supposedly, the school is investigating Bella, and I'm not sure what that means. I'm not sure if they're actually, like, taking it seriously, or they're just saying, we'll look into it. Because, as I said before, a lot of people have been contacting Texas Tech University. They've been leaving comments on their Twitter. They've been going above and beyond to try to inform the school, hey, you have a bad hombre as one of your cast, or I should say, as one of your, you know, like, students that are enrolled in the campus, and I don't think that you want to associate with her ideals. And supposedly one YouTuber was in contact with the dean. You know, the dean was actually in active contact with them over email, supposedly. Again, like, wild and crazy claims can be made by anybody, but whether the dean's actually going to do anything remains to be seen, but perhaps she gets expelled. I think that's a little bit, like, that's not going to happen, considering the fact that Mike Janke contributed so much money, presumably, to get her in school in the first place. Number two, you know, the school's probably not going to look forwards to losing another source of revenue, you know? Students enrolled at the university are sources of revenue in the form of tuition costs and whatever expenses that they incur while attending the university. I mean, that should stand for reason. Obviously, there are things that you can do that are going to jeopardize your ability to attend school, but at the same time, if you more or less, like, keep your activities low-key and enough people aren't, like, really aware of them, then you can probably skirt on by with getting away with, like, a couple little things, you know? But in Loretta's case, Bella's case, like, supposedly this is, like, an active investigation into, like, her activities. And the trolls will likely be, like, more than happy to share whatever material that they managed to gain from that server that she was hiding in. Remember, the server, at least one of the servers had to be nuked from orbit, as in they were purposefully self-reporting themselves to try to have everything erased. They're posting gore and shock imagery that, you know, quite frankly, a lot of normal people would not want to see. And they were self-reporting themselves to hopefully get the whole server banned and, like, nuked from orbit, completely erased. Because if you erase it yourself, the records still remain behind, and somebody in, like, administration, like an admin or a dev, can look into that if they so wished. Granted, that's a lot of what-if scenarios. That's a lot of, like, they would have to know specifically who they're looking into, like, who was in this Discord server, but supposedly there's a record of it if you don't nuke it from orbit. You know, I'm not trying to, like, give you tips on how to hide your illicit activities, but I'm just saying, like, what happened in Bella's case. So, yeah. My prediction still holds fast that she's going to get a slap on the wrist. They're probably going to revoke her internet access except for schoolwork. Not sure how they're going to monitor that, but I guess they're going to block a lot of sites and, like, services, but maybe. That, like, I know that things are a little bit more advanced now that they can, like, purportedly do that. But at the same time, you gotta wonder, is this going to be one of those situations where the university says it's going to do something and pretends to do it, but actually didn't do a damn thing? Because, you know, like, that's entirely possible. Anyway, other than that, like, the Kiwi farmers have just been, like, exploring Bella's past, you know. Her associations, as far as, like, the usernames and, like, the actual name of the individual that was associated with her. Machete Duck was nice enough to give a sort of synopsis, basically provided a document so that people could keep along and keep track of who these people are, what they're all about, and what their association with Bella was, because some of these people were kind of like lurkers, you know? It's like the creepy night manager at Stucky's type. You just kind of lurk in the corner. These are the people that were at least in small numbers in the server that weren't active participants in what was actually being said. And it's worth mentioning that because, you know, they had access to a lot of material, but they weren't really contributing a lot of their own. They weren't really commenting on things unless, you know, they just happened to be looking at the chat and happened to see something that struck their interest, or, you know, they just were kind of lurkers, you know? They didn't have the time, wherewithal, or patience to constantly look at the chat and be engaged in the conversation. Granted, given the source material, would you really want to be a part of that conversation? I don't think I would, but at the same time, I guess it really depends on your mindset and what gets you off at night. But yeah, as far as Max goes, Max had been the one, like, animal that had drawn a lot of interest from a lot of Kiwi farmers, trolls, and people on Encyclopedia Dramatica. There's some overlap between, like, you know, the three. This goes beyond just Kiwi farms, you know, Encyclopedia Dramatica. This goes to Reddit. This goes to 4chan. But at the same time, like, a lot of people, they had a liking for Max, you know? They couldn't help but feel that to die at Bella's hands, allegedly, that was just an absolutely terrible fate. And they actually thanked Max, because Max is, like, you know, they are basically held on the pedestal insofar as being, you know, considered to be the one to bring Bella down. The one that drew the interest of the internet and sort of was, I wouldn't say a red herring, but like the one, like, creature that drew a lot of interest towards Bella's activities against small animals. The hamster torture thing came out later, but, you know, I guess it's heart-wrenching. The idea that something so small and cuddly that they literally wasted away in Bella's care. She had every opportunity to be just as nice as she appeared to be in that video I showed you earlier. And yet, instead of, like, actually taking care of the animal like a sane person would, she let it die in its own filth. Its paws having to be amputated because they rotted away, and, you know, the rest of its body going soon with it. Because, you know, like, what kind of a life can an animal expect to have without paws? You know, they're basically a cripple at that point. Hell, without legs, without a tail. You know, I don't think it got that far. I think they died shortly after the whole amputation of their paws. I'm wondering if she actually took them to see a vet, though. Because, like, I'm wondering if she did it herself. I'll look into it again. But, like, the first time around, I just remember that its paws had to be amputated because the condition was so terrible. So, like I said before, some of you are in full belief and agreement that she's guilty of all these allegations. Some of you believe that she's guilty of some of the allegations, but you're on the fence about anything else. Others, you believe that maybe a few of the allegations are true, but most of it is just exaggeration and hyperbole. And maybe a scant few of you are just utter and complete skeptics. You believe the whole thing is just the internet getting in a tizzy over a dizzy twist that could be Belle Delphine's, you know, or Pokemon's sister. Yeah. I will say this. It's always good to exercise your professional skepticism and best judgment in the face of information, because you need to determine whether it's credible information and whether the source is credible. You know, substantiating whatever claim or whatever allegation is being presented before you. So in this case, I would have to say that really it was Bella's behavior that was sort of a tip-off to me about her not being exactly a good and honest person, number one. Number two, her own words, like basically her admissions, you know, are pretty damning. But also, even the words of those closest to her that have no real reason to defend her anymore and are free to basically come out of the woodwork and give their 2 cents on their experiences with Bella, on top of, like, former roommates that have been sort of, like, coming out and explaining, hey, this is my experience with this individual and it wasn't good. You know, a couple people have taken it upon themselves, like Tommy Dick Girl and a couple others, to interview these people and try to get to, you know, some sort of consensus on what their actual experience was, whether, like, the experience was not embellished in any way, it was just, you know, absolutely what happened, how it happened, and their testimonies on it, you know? And this goes far beyond anything that we could have ever considered when the chat logs, and I'm talking about the audio chat logs between her and Chris Chan, broke water. I mean, like, all the twists and turns, all of the bullshit that came out of Bella's mouth, and all of the very, very soul-draining activities that she's guilty of, and everything about her everyday life is known, like, now. Especially her parents. And it's like, her parents, for being such well-decorated individuals, it really speaks to, like, the rich bitch syndrome, you know? She's like, a lot of people, like, you know, a lot of you all were sort of remarking about how she came from a wealthy background and was free to live this carefree life on, like, father's dime, and not really have to face consequences of her actions over time. And, you know, now that she's an adult, she just has this spoiled rich bitch sort of attitude, and it sort of manifests itself into her being, how would you say, narcissistic, egotistical, and really dumb. Because, you know, daddy's money cannot buy you intelligence. That's something you gotta figure out for yourself. Anyway, as far as, like, what everybody's waiting for right now, not a whole lot of new developments. It's largely been revelations that are coming out about her activities, her past, her associations with other people, but everybody seems to be holding their breath, anticipating like something big happening. Whether it's going to be Bella coming out publicly and, you know, having a massive spurg out session in retaliation for the internet raking her over the coals, or maybe her father doing something, or maybe her going to court for that weapons charge in New York, or, you know, even the school taking action against her. You know, the jury's out on which, like, direction this is going to go. So, the sort of, like, consensus among some people is that something big's going to come out. So, I guess all we can really do right now is sort of wait and see. I think I've spoken on this subject matter to very great length. In fact, the past several videos have largely been centered around her. But that's partly because there's just such a wealth of information now. It's like, take your pick. What do you want to cover first? What do you want to cover in this video? A lot of what's covered in this video, subtle reminders of things I've mentioned before, but also collated with newfound information, especially those videos, some of which are new, some of which are old, so, you know, like, just sort of look at that and, you know, decide for yourself what you think about it, you know. And I have to say, I really appreciate you guys sticking by me and, you know, watching my content. I am obviously a small-time YouTuber, but I'm trying to pick myself up by the bootstraps and really develop a prosperous channel. So I hope you all enjoyed the video, guys. Till next time, take care and peace. I hope you all have a better one.